Okay, well, I hope everyone can hear us. We're going to go ahead and get started. We want to welcome our community, our Foxwoode Meadows community and surrounding neighbors to this town hall. I am Jeron Hollis, the Communications and Public Engagement Director for the City of High Point, and we are happy that we have those of you that have decided to attend to come and listen to some of the information that, important information that we have to share. Before we get started, just want to do a few items of housekeeping. We have decided that we wanted to use our virtual meeting format in order to facilitate this meeting. So what we'll see is as you join this meeting as an attendee, you should be able to hear us. You'll see through Zoom a Q&A prompt. Using that Q&A prompt at the time that we designate, put in your questions if you have a question that you want answered, and we will recognize those questions as they come through. Once we have identified the question, we will bring that individual attendee in if there are any follow-ups. Once you've asked your question, we will move accordingly to the next person. This is going to be set up where we get an introduction and there are a couple of staff presentations. After that staff presentation, we invite the members of the community that are in this town hall to ask their questions, and they will be recognized accordingly. We have staff members that are here that, if you look on the chat, are able to ask questions, answer questions, and if there's some direct communication that we need to do after this town hall, we can get your individual information and contact you directly. I'm looking, I don't see any other housekeeping questions. So if there aren't any, what I'd like to do is introduce our Ward 6 representative, Councilmember Michael Holmes. And at this point, he will give some information and get the meeting kicked off. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to thank you all for being here. I know this was kind of a quick turnaround to get this together and then get the word out. Considering the current environment that we live in, we felt it would be prudent for us to take the virtual format, as Jeron stated. Some of you I've had a chance to meet. I've had a chance to go down to the Foxwoode Meadows development and see some of the issues that have been there for a while. Back in the spring, Councilman Jones and I, we had planned to do a town hall, then COVID happened, so everything went virtual. But at that time, there were some solutions that were put on the table for the mitigation of this issue here. So what we wanted to do was to, because of the recent flooding events, I've heard from some of you, and so at this time we felt like it was a good opportunity for us to get these potential solutions in front of you, let you know what it's going to take, what some of the options are, what some of the effects will be, costs, all the things that are going to be associated with mitigating the situation for you guys, and what the extent of the city can do. So on the call tonight, we have Lee Burnette, Robbie Stone, Interim City Manager Randy McCaslin, and Councilman Victor Jones as well. They're all here. So I will turn it over to Lee, who's going to lead us off. And then I think Robbie will follow with some presentations, and then I think we'll get into the Q&A after that. So I'm going to unmute myself, and Lee, if you're ready, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Councilman Holmes. Good evening. I'm going to provide a little bit of a short background on the development of the Foxwoode Meadows subdivision. The Foxwoode Meadows development actually began in 1967 when the City Council approved a voluntary annexation request from the property owners of about a 79-acre tract of land. Later in 1967, a 140-lot single-family residential subdivision plan was approved by the city for the property, and that would create the Foxwoode Meadows development as we know it today. When the Foxwoode Meadows subdivision was approved, there were no flood damage prevention standards in effect like there are today. Today, there are requirements for constructing and developing on land in flood hazard areas. It actually started in 1968 when the U.S. Congress passed legislation that created the National Flood Insurance Program, and which today provides flood insurance to communities like High Point that have flood damage prevention standards. However, it was not until the 1970s that the North Carolina General Assembly enabled cities, as well as other local governments, the authority to regulate land in flood hazard areas. And it was not until later in 1978 that the National Flood Insurance Program actually mapped the specific flood hazard areas in High Point. So the southern portion of the Foxwoode Meadows subdivision was developed in an area that would later be mapped in 1978 as a flood hazard area. And prior to any flood damage prevention standards, which is like a good portion of the city. I'm not familiar as to when flooding issues actually began within the Foxwoode Meadows subdivision. However, it was a reoccurring issue that the city was very aware of when a request was submitted to develop the adjacent tract of land to the east. Actually, in 2001, the city received annexation and zoning requests for the property immediately to the east of the Foxwoode Meadows subdivision. This property would later be developed as the Williams Grove subdivision. As part of the rezoning request, the city staff negotiated with the developer some zoning conditions for approval, whereby the proposed Williams Grove development would actually help with some of the problems that the residents of the Foxwoode Meadows subdivision were experiencing. The first zoning condition was that the developer would connect Rivermead Drive to the new Williams Grove subdivision so that the street system within Williams Grove would provide an alternate access route for the residents of Foxwoode Meadows out to Deep River Road. The second condition would require the developer to install a stormwater control measure, basically a wet pond, on the southern portion of the Williams Grove subdivision, just north of the Deep River and south of the Rivermead Street extension, where it would capture some stormwater runoff from both subdivisions. The city's engineering department studied and analyzed that some of the stormwater benefit, there would be some stormwater benefit to the Foxwoode Meadows subdivision with such a location of a stormwater pond. These zoning conditions were supported by the city's engineering, transportation, and planning staffs, as well as actually recommended by the city's Planning and Zoning Commission when the commission considered the rezoning request. However, some Foxwoode Meadows residents voiced concerns at the public hearing that traffic from the Williams Grove development would cut through Foxwoode Meadows to obtain access to East Chester Drive, and thereby cause more traffic along Rivermead Drive. The residents did not support the street connection or the stormwater control conditions. Ultimately, the city council removed the street connection and stormwater control conditions when they later approved the annexation and zoning request for the Williams Grove subdivision in 2001. The next year in 2002, there was another major rain event that resulted in flooding in the Foxwoode Meadows development. However, some of the Foxwoode Meadows residents came to a city council meeting, afterward, some of the Foxwoode Meadows residents came to a city council meeting to request that the city either reestablish the street connection condition upon the developer, or that the city actually construct the street connection to the Williams Grove subdivision. By this time, the developer had received subdivision plan approval and was in the process of building homes within the development, and therefore could no longer be required to make that street connection. It was determined that the city would have to acquire land for the street connection, construct the street, and buy lots within the new Williams Grove development with houses that were currently under construction at that time. Ultimately, the city council decided not to take any action due to the total estimated cost of actually making that street connection. So that's a little bit of background on how this Foxwoode Meadows development came to be, the reasons why there are flooding issues or conditions within the development, as well as prior attempts by the city to actually make some street connections.
Hello, I'm Robbie Stone with the Public Services Department here with the City of High Point. I'm going to share a map that we have created, just kind of taking a step back and looking at some potential high-level possible solutions. Let me see if I can share this. Okay, you should, hopefully on your screen now you can see the map there. On this map, you can see the flood zone that Mr. Burnette was just talking about. There's a lot of the area in the River Mead Drive that is within that flood zone. It does extend through some other locations as well. We have looked at this. We have looked at this location, and I've been out there during some storm events as well to see the flooding in this area. The River Mead Drive location, where you see the solid blue line here in kind of the left side of the screen, that is where the flooding typically occurs, for those of you that may not be as familiar with it. But we have looked at some locations of possible solutions of what we can do to help help the folks who are in this neighborhood. So we've come up with two potential alternatives, option A and option B, up here to the kind of near the top of the screen here. Now, I want to be upfront and state that we have done no surveying. There's been no preliminary engineering work. These are just looking at two possible general locations of where we could have access from the Foxwoode Meadows subdivision over to the Williams Grove subdivision. So we have an option A and an option B. Option A is connecting Middlewood Court over to Running Cedar Court. With option B, it would connect Green Stone Place to Running Cedar Trail. Each option will cost around $600,000. And again, that estimate is without any surveying or engineering or geotechnical work in that location. So here are just two potential options to give access from that portion of the neighborhood during storm events to have to be able to leave the neighborhood when needed or come into the neighborhood as needed during storm events. Yes, so in the River Mead section here where they have the solid blue line, as I mentioned, that's where the majority of the flooding occurs. We were asked, we did look at, well, could that section of roadway be built up there? And we did have some preliminary, just again, a very high level preliminary look at that. In order to make that accessible, again, without engineering and without survey and other design work put into this at this time, we'd have to raise about 800 linear feet of roadway, and we'd have to raise that approximately 4 to 5 feet higher than it currently is right now. Now, when we do that, it still will not take it out of the floodplain or the flood zone, so it would still be within that yellow area that you would see right there. And it also does not prevent the rest of the subdivision from flooding, especially during the 100-year storm events, due to what we refer to in the engineer world as backwater conditions. We would have to perform a detailed flood study. This flood study we're estimating to cost about $100,000, and then with the raising of the road for that 800 feet, we're estimating about $1.2 million. So this alternative, again, without engineering and design and surveying, is going to be probably around the $1.3 million or more, which is more than double of option A or option B that we just discussed on the upper side of the map there. With that, I have nothing else to present from these maps. I will be available, as Jeron mentioned early on, to try to answer some questions as we move forward from here. And I can leave the map up in case anyone has any questions or wants to refer to that.
Thank you, Robbie. Just if City Manager McCaslin is on, could you talk about what would be necessary for us to do the process if any one of these options were chosen? What would be the process of enacting any one of these solutions? And I know some other people have questions, but I wanted to get City Manager McCaslin on to kind of discuss that, the process.
Yes, Michael, I'll be happy to. As you are well aware, the city cannot conduct any type of project, especially of this nature, without having appropriated funds. City Council has not, as a body, approved any project in this area for flood control. That would have to be done first. We would then, as Robbie stated, be looking at once some funds, the budget is amended and funds are available, we would be looking at engineering work that would probably be in the nature of 6 months or so. And then we could move forward with the project at that point. It would, due to the size of the project, it would have to be bid out. That's generally a 60 to 90 day process once engineering work has been completed, and then we could start the construction shortly thereafter.
Thank you, Randy. I think there are some questions in the chat box.
Thank you, Councilman Holmes. Just to recap from the beginning, if you do have questions, we're going to start answering some of the questions here. If you do have questions, we'd ask that you put those in the Q&A at this time. And then what we'll do is get to them in the order they're received. We'll try to answer these questions as succinctly as possible. If we do get into some questions that require some additional research or are very specific, we will capture your information and talk to you directly after this particular meeting, if that's necessary. We'd like to start, there's a question from resident Ms. Teresa Kirby. When the city decided not to connect the roads in 2002, how were the residents here notified? And just so you know, as we answer these questions, if the residents will give them the opportunity, if there's some follow-up on that particular question, we'll give you an opportunity for that particular question and just kind of see how it flows from there. So at this time, who wants to take that question? How were the residents notified?
I can try to respond to that. Yeah, when that occurred in 2002, there was a number, I can't remember the actual number, that came to a city council meeting to petition that they seek that additional access that was going to be part of the zoning condition of the Williams Grove subdivision. I do know that the city council asked that the engineering department explore that. It did take a little time for the engineering department to explore and look at the numbers of what it would take to make that connection. And it would have required acquiring, in addition to extending the street, would have required acquiring several, I think 1 or 2 lots with the houses that were currently under construction. I know that the city council did decide not to take action, but I don't recall how they actually notified anybody, from that subsequent meeting that the council actually made that decision. I'm not sure if there would be anything in the minutes that would give any indication as to notification, but it was, I do recall that the city council, ultimately when it came back to council, they made a decision not to proceed further with it.
Thank you, Lee. Ms. Kirby, did that answer that part of your question? We see you have others. We'll come back to the others in order.
I'd like to, if I can unmute. No, that did not answer the question because I've been here. I've owned my home for 27 years, and I can emphatically deny if anyone says we've ever been notified of any option other than this meeting today. I'm very vocal, I'm very engaged, and I'm very articulate. I appreciate everyone on this call giving us a voice. I pray that this causes some action. One of my questions was the percentage of homeowners versus renters, because I've talked to Victor and there may be the possibility that homeowners have to absorb some of this. That's going to be an internal thing, but I absolutely categorically deny any notification from the city of High Point to any of the owners here saying that we could or could not connect those roads, and they chose not to, without any kind of options to us. It seems like legally there would be some obligation to the city of High Point to the safety of the residents here inside this subdivision. It is a safety matter when we cannot leave our home, nor can we return to our home. Pray to God no one has a heart attack or something happens and you can't get here to us. This is not a pretty thing. It's not making our streets pretty. It's a matter of safety, and that's why we're so vehement about being heard.
Well, Ms. Kirby, thank you for that clarification. I don't know, based on the questions that you presented, which are some really good questions. I'm not sure what percentage of that can be answered specifically in this forum, but I do know from the registration that we do have your email, and so we'll be more than happy as staff, with the blessing of our city manager, we can follow up with you one-on-one for specifics. But just to reiterate what the manager said earlier, the next step in this process would be a discussion by our elected board. And so I think from a process standpoint, I think that's where we are. There'll probably be some opportunities between now and then for additional dialogue, but for the purposes of what we're doing now, we really appreciate that feedback, and that feedback is going to help inform some of the decisions and dialogue that comes forward. Based on the other questions, because I'm just looking at the others, the percentage of homeowners versus renters in the subdivision, we can try to get that information to you. I don't know if anybody here on the call has that specific tally, or if we can get it before the call's out, we could share it in the chat here. If not, would it be okay if we sent that to you directly? Ms. Kirby, you still there?
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Kirby. We're going to move to our next person. They're listed as an anonymous attendee. I'm not sure if we're able to give them audio or not, but the question is, so do people live on the other side of the river behind Rivermead? Is there an option to create runoff or drainage pond in that direction? Is that a Robbie Stone question?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so looking at the flow of the water downstream there, that is in a flood zone. So can you hear me? I need to do something.
We can hear you.
Okay. Make sound of that. Okay. Sorry about that. So looking at the flow of the water downstream there, this is in the flood zone. The flood zone, when we do have these extreme rains, it does basically hold water. It acts as a pond and holding water. So water does back up, hence the flooding in the roadway. So there is nothing that we can do within the flood zone down here or downstream to necessarily make this make the flooding of that portion of Rivermead go away.
Thank you, Robbie. I don't know if our attendee, they might have dropped off the call. All right, let's move to our next question. Is from Mrs. I don't want to butcher your name, Latelia Turner. The question being, why can't we just bring Riverhead out to Deep River? The look of this map looks like it will disrupt the lives and structures that exist currently. I'm at the top of Middlewood Court, 1930, and it looks like it's going to be a nuisance to our way of life. Who wants to tackle that question?
Okay, Jeron, I'll try that one as well. So we did look at extending Rivermead at its current end location, but that Rivermead is still within the flood zone. So we were concerned without any engineering, any design work, that if we tried to extend any portion of Rivermead there, that eventually it's going to be will be underwater again. So we said, you know what, if we're going to perform any work, let's go in with an option that we know is not in the flood zone and will provide access, egress and ingress at all times for the customers and citizens in this neighborhood.
Thank you, Robbie. Ms. Turner, if we're able to give you an opportunity, does the questions, does Robbie's answers, does that answer your question? Is there any follow-up on that particular question that we can help you with before we move on to the next participant? If you can hear us and we can hear you, Ms. Turner.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
So basically, the way the map looks, it looks like I'm in the cul-de-sac right here at the top of Middlewood Court. I'm actually the last house, and well, the middle house in the middle of the street. I can actually walk through my backyard and go to the run and see the trail. But it looks like on that map that it's gonna be, you're gonna have to move some houses or something for a road to get there.
Okay.
Am I right?
And I do appreciate that comment. Again, I want to emphasize that there's been no surveying and no detailed engineering work. I do not want to state that we're moving any houses or anything at this time until we can actually, if we get approval from council to move forward and management to move forward with this project, then we would come out and start our more detailed investigation with the engineering and survey and decide exactly where this roadway will be placed.
So to your point, Robbie, and thank you for that question, Ms. Turner. There are a lot of things that we won't be able to determine until we have more information, surveys, engineering work, and then we'd be able to provide a clearer picture of what a resolution or an attempt at a resolution would look like. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Ms. Turner. Our next question is from Rick Morgan. Mr. Morgan asked, would you consider installing a cistern with pumps, lines, etc. in the empty lot between Halifax Court and Middlewood Court beside the creek, which always floods? The cost could be as low as $500,000, not a lot. And I think that question kind of ends there. Robbie, is that you again?
Yes, sir. I'm not aware of us installing any cisterns in the city for this reason. I know that folks do have those for watering their gardens, watering their lawns and stuff. Again, that would still reside within the flood zone, and that would require a detailed flood study. I'm not sure that we could have a cistern large enough to eliminate the volume of water that would need to be removed from this area to eliminate the flooding on Rivermead.
Thank you, Robbie. Mr. Morgan, are you there? Can you hear us, Mr. Morgan?
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Morgan, can you hear us? We can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm right
Thank
here.
you, sir.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Please, was there anything else you wanted to illuminate on that question?
Well, I'm just thinking to get some kind of a return on the tax money that's being collected by the city out of this neighborhood every year. I've lived here 32 years, and this problem is getting worse and worse. We had some help about 20 years ago when Becky Smothers was the mayor. I'm not sure what they did. They might have dredged out the creek and put some riprap in, but something needs to be done because my wife and I are both seniors. And if we had an emergency, as Ms. Kirby had mentioned, or someone had to get out, we're stuck. We have no way to get out. I'm at 1920 Greenstone, out of the floodplain, but we're still isolated. And also the house at the end of Rivermead, before you get to the dead end, those people have been going through a lot of heck because the bottom hill, the hill that comes down from their home, floods constantly when we get a lot of rain, and also Rivermead itself floods at the end of Rivermead. So if you put a road through, that's not going to do much good because the river's going to overflow its banks and come right up their driveway and flood Rivermead Drive. I don't know what the answer is.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan, for that information. we're capturing the information from the questions and dialogue. One of the attendees is absolutely right. So the questions, the follow-up that we give for everything that's covered here, we will compile it and have it available. So if there are any outstanding answers that come from questions asked here, we'll be able to share that information with the attendees, probably via email if we were able to capture that. So thank you again, Mr. Morgan. And that was from Martina Holt. Now, Ms. Holt, I don't know if that was the extent of your question as far as sharing. If we can go ahead and get Ms. Holt on the line so we can hear her and she can hear us back and forth. Ms. Holt, does that answer your question?
Well, that was two separate questions. I know that you said earlier that Teresa had a list of questions, and I think we all want to hear those answers or the responses to those questions that she had asked. But my question was, can the creek be cleared out? Because not only is it flooding in that main space, but also from Rivermead to Greenstone, it floods in that corner. So Greenstone can be flooded too, along with Rivermead. So there needs to be another access to get out of here.
Okay, Ms. Holt, so your question there is about the creek specifically?
Well, the creek is overgrown, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they've only been out one time to clear that out.
Right.
And that was over a decade ago. So is there any way that they can come and clear the creek out? Maybe that may alleviate some of this issue that we have with flooding until we can get some type of access.
If it's okay, Ms. Holt, we're going to ask Robbie to answer that question. As Robbie comes, I know I'll sound like a broken record, but this is a preliminary or early step in whatever resolution looks like for this issue. So as we get more information, as there's more studies done and more dialogue, I think we'd be able to refine these answers as far as next steps a bit more. So you'll constantly hear us saying to the answers of some of these questions that we have more work, studies, surveys, et cetera. So that is that's the truth there as far as what the next steps in the process are. So it might sound redundant, but
Jeron, this is Councilman Holmes.
Yes.
And to your point, once we, this is preliminary. Once we gather the information from this session, and we do more studies, the next level of your input will then be necessary, because as you will direct counsel on what the options are that you would like to pursue. But we have to refine these options. We have to give them to you in detail. And then at that point, we feel like it will be the residents of Foxwoode Meadows that will give us the type of direction that we need to make decisions based on what you guys need. So this was the first step. This is us listening. This is us sharing with you the options that are on the table. As Jeron stated, we'll refine those, and then in some form, we'll come back and collect, the collective voice of the neighborhood, and then make decisions after that.
Thank you, Councilman Holmes. I'm looking. We have, if we can see it here, we have a few raised hands. We have a question from Debbie Maines. Miss Maines, we're going to try to get it to where we can hear you if you're still there. Can you hear us, Miss Maines?
I can.
Yes, please go ahead with your question.
I have a couple questions actually, but I know you said that you would address them later, but I am like Teresa. We have lived in the neighborhood since 1991. I live on Rivermead, right before Halifax on the right. So not only do I deal with flooding in the road, I deal with flooding in my backyard. constantly in my backyard. I agree with Mr. Morgan, who's lived here for 30 years, that it has gotten worse. I was one of the participants in the 2002 when you wanted to put the road all the way through to that subdivision off of Deep River. And yes, most of the residents who were notified, there was some that were not. We did not want it for the fact that we have a couple police officers that live in our neighborhood, and they did recommend that not to do it. It would deter crime in the area because one way in and one way out of the neighborhood. I will tell you, I deal with speeding on Rivermead. I really would not want another road connecting to Rivermead. That being said, I have a daughter who has numerous medical conditions, and if I needed to get out of this neighborhood, I would need someone to be able to come down if I called 911. My question is, there's a couple questions I have, but one of the main questions is, why is not the spillway opened prior to a prediction of a storm, a tropical storm? We see most of the flooding when we have these tropical storms. Last year we had them back to back, and that was really bad. That's when they closed the whole road from East Chester coming in, and we had to park up the road and walk down into our development through lawns to get to our homes. I'm not sure if there's a reason why it's not open, and we open it prior to kind of deter that flooding. For the resident who said, can we do something behind the river? It does. I agree with Mr. Stone. It goes all the way back. It comes into my yard. My shed is 4 feet off the ground, and it gets into my shed when it floods. I have people's debris in my yard. I've seen sandboxes, play sets, trampolines floating down the river. So this is a really serious issue, and I thank you all for inviting us to this. And I really think that we need to keep going with it because of the fact that kids once they go back to school, this time it wasn't so bad because the kids didn't need to go to school or catch school buses. But I have 3 children that are now grown, and I've seen dump trucks carry them over the water to get to the bus. So I am one that I would love follow-up. I would love for you all to keep going with this and not stop. I know you said you haven't really done any studies, but I do appreciate you bringing this to the forefront. It has been going on since probably this development was created, and not just in recent years. So Mr. Stone, is there a reason why the spillway is not open?
Yes, the main reason is because when we do open that spillway, it will, I'm sorry, I keep getting a message popping up here. When you open the spillway, it will only lower that lake level about 1 foot in a 24-hour period. So we can lower it, but we also have to be careful to have a safe yield. Everybody knows we've had events where a storm has missed us and we have not received the rain. So we don't want to lower it an extreme amount and then not have enough water yield or get lower on our water yield that we supply to our customers. Even with lowering it, open it up and lowering it 1 foot or 2 feet, whatever it may be, the drainage basin that then comes back into that the lake there fills up very quickly as well. So it would basically take an extreme amount of lowering to really see a drastic or dramatic impact downstream or in the Rivermead area here.
Thank you. That was a question that I've always wondered, so I appreciate you answering that. The other 2 options that were shown for another alternative route out of our neighborhood, I totally agree with, but I would put a stipulation on it that, and I'm saying this because yesterday there was an accident right in front of my house. Someone was blinded by the sun and hit my parked car out front, and her husband was injured. To deter speeding, I'm going to put a little caveat in there that I would love speed bumps on this road, that people do 40, 50 miles an hour on my road. And I understand the people on Greenstone and Middlewood who don't want that, but I don't want that either on my road. One of these days, a little kid is going to get hit or someone is going to be seriously injured because of that speeding. And we know if we open it up to someone coming from Deep River, they will use it as a cut through to get to East Chester. Plus getting out of this neighborhood is hard enough with the East Chester traffic. It would really be backed up on Rivermead. So, but I would put that in there, I would ask. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Ms. Maines. I see we have Kristen Kazel. My apologies again if I'm mispronouncing your name. Kristen, you have your hand raised. Is there a question you'd like to ask staff?
Yes. This is actually Mike. I'm actually Kristen's husband.
Okay. Hi, Mike.
We live next to Teresa, actually, and I actually work for the city of High Point. And I'm considered what I understand to be an essential employee due to where I work with the city. And, you know, there's been times that I've had to leave and had to turn around and go get my wife's car and take a risk of driving through that to get to work and risk water coming into our vehicle. And I also think to kind of echo what Teresa was saying as well, and other people have stated that with backyards flooding, Teresa and I have had major flooding in the back, flooding so bad over the past couple years that I actually had to go and tear up the subfloor of my shed in the back because the water rushing down had actually washed the cinder blocks that support it up nearly all the way underneath to where the backside of it was about to collapse. And I mean, I'm with everyone as for the speed bumps. I don't really support having another road to come in because I do believe that will, like we've heard already about the crime or just an over amount of traffic coming through. But speed bumps, I think, would be a huge plus as far as the speeding goes. I just wanted to echo that because I heard someone talk about it, and I've heard and seen people speeding on this road, and I have a child that plays here, and we just want to make sure that the children are safe. But as far as the flooding goes, I can tell you that I have this creek that goes along the backside of my house with everyone else on Greenstone, and water rushes down there so quick and so fast and in large amounts. It's insane. I actually have called the city to ask you guys to come out and actually dig that up for me and make it bigger, because I got water that just comes up in pools over into my backyard and completely saturates the ground.
Thank you for that feedback, Michael. We will, from the standpoint, we will capture that along with the other comments to take into consideration. Robbie, I don't know if you had a particular response to any of those. If so, yes. If not, we can go to the next question.
Jeron, I'd like to just interject. We've I think I've heard at least 2 folks now mention speed bump. There is a process in place for that. They can contact the transportation department, and there's a petition process, and they'll have all the steps laid out. I know there's much bigger issues that everybody in here is dealing with right now as well, but just wanted to get that word out there that there is a process in place, and they can start that by contacting the transportation department.
Thank you, Robbie. Just as a matter of housekeeping, earlier we mentioned questions that were asked by attendees. We're actually running through those questions that we have up. This meeting is actually a recorded meeting. So as we get to the answers to those questions, you'll see when we talked about making direct contact, that would be if a resident had a particular question that maybe was not covered during the scope of this meeting. We're always available to answer particular questions, but we're running through the questions that are asked. So there's not a list of questions per se that we're referring to that we're not covering here in the meeting. And it looks like we'll be able to keep pretty good time and work through those questions. So if you're worried that something was asked that you're not going to see, just hang in there with us. If it hasn't been answered already, we'll try to work through those questions. And we appreciate your patience on that. Keeping that in mind, There was a question about process. This is from Ms. Kirby. Is it normal to involve residents with city meetings? This is such an example of a town hall meeting where there is resident engagement. There are some processes from a meeting standpoint with the city that are deliberations with staff and with council. So all meetings that are public meetings have public attendance that are available, but we have certain junctures where we get public input, things like town halls, speakers from the floor, but we do have staff that are available if there are particular questions to get those answered. But from the standpoint of involving residents with city meetings, those are the meetings that we have are public, and we do provide avenues for feedback from residents if that answers that question. There's another question about what changed for approximately 8 years that caused zero flooding on Rivermead. Was it overgrowth? That was a question from Ms. Kirby again. So we're talking about 8 years ago, zero flooding and overgrowth. Robbie, do you want to try to tackle that one?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that, Jeron. You know, with every year, there's a different set of storms. Unfortunately, it seems like the past 2 to 3 years we've had the unforgiving storms. I know we've had some years that have been more drought laden. So I can't speak exactly and say yes, it's because of this issue or that issue, but it just does seem to kind of fluctuate with the storm sequence that we get each year. I know, but it seems like this past, I'm gonna say 3 years, that we have been inundated with more storms than we were previously to that.
Thank you, Robbie. We're gonna keep moving along with these questions. We ask for folks to raise their hands, and we'll try to answer the questions. Some of you have had a few questions in the hopper here for a few minutes, so we're trying to do these in order. Max Small said he wants the answers to Mrs. Kirby's questions. That was answered in my earlier comments about us going through all these questions, and we'll have this meeting available from the recording standpoint. Another question from Ms. Kirby: can you build an exit point at the top of Greenstone or Middlewood to 68? Robbie.
Yes, sir. So in order to do that, just looking at the map that was provided, we would be crossing at least one stream, possibly two streams to get there. It's going to be a much longer distance. And also we're talking with that longer distance, the price exponentially increases as well. Again, I've not looked at the topography traveling in that direction, but that would also play into the cost. So if we're looking at a cost-wise option, that is probably not the best solution compared to option A and option B that we have presented.
Thank you, Robbie. And what we'll see as we roll through these questions, some of these are kind of being answered as we go through. But if you're raising your hand now, we're almost done getting through the questions entered in through the Q&A. So we'll try to work through these accordingly. So just bear with us. There is a part of a question again here from Ms. Kirby as far as the what responsibility, because some of it we've addressed, people talking about the frequency of flooding at their homes, but there is a question that asks what responsibility does the city have to homeowners if their actions cause these results to homeowners, with these results being flooding? I don't know that we have any of our legal folks on the call here. Who wants to take a stab at that one?
Jeron, this is Councilman Holmes. Teresa, I can engage our city attorney to give us some input on what liability and responsibility could be. If you give me a day or so, I'll get that information. If you want to email me a direct question that I can refer to our city attorney, I will do that and do my best to get an answer to you on the question that you posed tonight.
Thank you, Michael. This is Randy, and that's exactly what I was going to say. If they will provide us with contact information, we'll pose that question to our attorneys and get back to you with an answer.
Thank you, City Manager McKesson and Councilman Holmes. We're going to continue to work through these questions. There was a question that we have from Ms. Marzena Odolinska. My apologies in advance. The question is, are you considering cleaning out the creek? It's clogged. I think there was a similar question earlier. I don't know that we have an additional answer because I think there was someone that asked that earlier. So I don't know if there's anything to add to that particular question. I think that the answer before that that Robbie had provided came earlier in the meeting. So I'll move on from that one. There's another part, water can't flow when there's a bunch of trash in it. And we talked about trampolines that were flowing down the street. A question, go above the water. This is from Ms. Kirby again. Top of the division. Oh, we got a few questions coming in now. All right, go above the water, top of the subdivision. Is that not being looked into? And I think we talked about the top of the subdivision as part of an answer to Robbie's question earlier. Robbie, is that the same answer that you gave earlier about looking at the top of the subdivision to see what work or engineering? Is that the same answer that you gave before?
I think so, Jeron. And if I am interpreting that question properly, top of the subdivision to me says near the end of the cul-de-sac, so maybe near the end of Middlewood Court. So that is where we're looking at for our option A and option B in that general vicinity. But those would be potentially connecting over to the Williams Grove subdivision.
Thank you, Robbie. We have another question that is, this is from Latilia Turner. Can we do, as Morgan said, and try to drench it out deeper through the backs of those homes? Drench it out deeper through the backs of those homes, Robbie?
No, sir. Since it's in the flood zone, that's one thing we cannot do is go out and basically change that topography or the existing ground location. And even if we were able to, this would be a huge amount of trenching, not just along the River Mead area, but well downstream of that as well. But that is not something that we cannot do within the flood zone.
Okay, thank you, Robbie. Another question that we have here from Ms. Kirby says this is a 53-year-old problem. What is the expected time frame on the next step? This has been ongoing, and this meeting seems to portray this as the first step. It makes everyone feel quite frustrated and have little hope that anything will be done. Was no prep work done before the call?
Jeron, I'll take that one. Ms. Kirby, as you know, we got the call, and you and I spoke, and I went back and I took a look through email traffic, and so this was something that was broached back a few months ago. And so the fact, due to COVID, we had planned to do this in person. It did not happen. So, we tried to pull together as quickly as we possibly could a way to hear your voices and to get some information back to you on what had been discussed prior about this issue, and also to get the experts here to give you the options. And we can get City Manager McCaslin up to talk about what the next steps will be and what they will look like. But we at least wanted to get this issue back on the forefront, back on the front of our minds, so that we can, make as much progress as possible. If City Manager McCaslin would come forward and talk about, what the budget process would look like, what we would need to do to appropriate funds for the next step, to share that with you. Maybe that can give you some insight into how we're going to progress and what we need to progress. So I know that it seems a little haphazard, but we tried to get as much, try to get it together as fast as we could possibly can, because we know that last incident of flooding was pretty bad. And this is something that Foxwoode Meadows and citizens of Ward 6 has been dealing with for a while. So, I apologize. I wish we had more concrete solutions to come out of this, but first we have to present the options and do the due diligence, and then we have to then hear from you all to find out what we need to do for next steps. So I know those were a lot of words that probably don't mean anything to you right now because of what you're dealing with, but this is kind of how we have to proceed.
And Michael, to specifically answer your question, we could put this as an item on our next agenda, which is December 7th, is our next opportunity to meet with the city council. We can present the options at that time, and if council is willing, we can go ahead and start the engineering process. As I said earlier, we're probably looking at 6 months of engineering work associated with a project of this size. And then as soon as that is complete, we would have a better idea of just actually what the total project cost would be and what any other options might be associated with addressing this issue, and bring it back to council. And again, it would be up to city council at that point to approve the project, appropriate the funds, and authorize us to move forward with it.
Thanks to the city manager and the council member Holmes again for that.
Jeron, really quickly. After we went forward with the engineering, how would we could you provide some potential options for how we could collect the consensus from Foxwoode Meadows on which option they would like to see us move forward with? Because I think, what I've heard tonight is there's some who would be in favor of certain options and some not so much. They have, specific concerns about some of the options that we've offered. So I would, as a representative of the ward, I would not feel comfortable unilaterally making a decision without at least hearing from the neighborhood and coming to a consensus. Could you give us an idea of how we could possibly collect that information before we made a decision?
Michael, I think, as I said, it would take approximately 6 months to do the engineering work on this project. Hopefully by that time, maybe the COVID situation would be better and we could end up with where we could hold a town hall meeting in person and discuss the options, which we've done in the past and on numerous projects, road projects, stormwater projects around the city. If not, we could certainly hold another virtual meeting of this nature. Council could hold a public hearing at one of its council meetings and have the residents attend, or whether it be virtually or in person, and provide their input. There's a number of ways we can reach out and get the residents' input.
Hey,
thank you, Randy.
Randy, I got a question for you, or Michael, either one, it doesn't matter. As Councilman Jones here, can we, some people are seeing like the social media posts, whether it's Nextdoor, Facebook, or whatever, but I think at the very least, we need to come up with some type of targeted mailer that we can, hopefully they'll all get, so that we can get as close to 100% of those residents on a meeting of some sort, whether it's virtual, whether it's town hall, public hearing. But we've got quite a few people here on this call, but I don't think we have nearly the participation that we need to make that determination to let Michael know what they want for us to do. So I think that needs to be in our discussion is, at a very low expense, at least do a mailer to each of the residents that would be affected, and to include Foxwoode Meadows and also Barrington Woods on the other side, to make sure they are aware of all the implications of what we're doing. I know the speeding might be a concern, but of some of the options, but when you're talking about lives being at risk, that, with the flooding, I'll take the speeding if it means people being able to safely get out of the neighborhood. It's not my district, but that's just my 2 cents.
Vic, thank you. I think that would be a very effective way of communication. I know sometimes, I tried to get it out as much as possible with Facebook and Nextdoor, but it's difficult to get a full representation of an entire neighborhood. So I think something like that would be appreciated, and I think it would be effective in getting this information out. So I guess we would need to, as we got closer to that point, come up with something to get out to everyone in the area. I tried to invite Barrington, the Barrington division. Is anyone here from Barrington?
Councilman Holmes, this is Councilman Jones. I did finally get in touch with get the information to reach their HOA.
Okay.
A friend of mine used to be the president of our HOA, and I talked to her earlier in the week, and she's no longer in that position. They've taken on a new management company. And so I do have that information that I can get to you as well, who the new company is. So you and I can kind of work together and making sure we reach out to them and include them on our next conversation. I don't know that we have enough to take it to council for a vote yet, but I would definitely say this could go in P&L. This could go into public safety, even either one of those committees.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's set up the next one of these sooner than later. I'd say in the next 30 days. If you in agreement with that, Councilman Holmes?
I absolutely am.
Okay. And then hopefully with a combination of, the neighbors that are on here getting the word out, and let's do that mailer to both neighborhoods. If we could just get a slightly higher participation, then I think you and I can report back to council that this is, what we've accomplished, and this is the consensus of what they would like to do as a possible remedy. I'll help in any way I can.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Ms. Maines, I saw your statement here. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to reach out to City Manager McCaslin to see if we can find some traffic calming, some immediate traffic calming options for the neighborhood. I know, we talk about speeding, we talk about those things, and so if there's any things in the interim that we can do, I'll come up with some options with the city manager. And if you want to email me or reach out to me, give me a call. We'll talk about those, and we'll see what we can get done on those traffic calming issues.
Okay, thanks to all three of you with your responses there. Just a reminder to the group, your questions and your responses are time stamped. So we're kind of working through that way. I know some of you have put in a couple of new questions, but we're going to try to do this sort of first come, first serve. So Ms. Turner, you had a question or a statement about a solution, or you had a question about a solution. If we can get Ms. Turner, if she's still with us, if we can get her connected.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, ma'am. You said you had a solution. That was about 20 minutes ago, I think, but.
Yeah, I was thinking, it's a business up here right at the top of the hill. And like I said, I stay at 1930 Middlewood, so I'm at the end of the street. and it's all woods, like behind my house. It's a parking lot right there. It's no way that you can bring up a street right here or either dig out, because it's a pond behind the house too. So you can't trench that out. That's why I was saying drench that out to the other pond back there to make it bigger so the water have a runoff or something. Or even build a street up to the parking lot, at least up there to the building that's up on East Chester. Maybe that'll be a solution.
And I appreciate you sharing that with us. That's definitely something that we can look at. I can't visualize that, and I don't know that am familiar with that, but that's definitely something we can look at.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. We're going to keep rolling through here. We had a question from Mrs. Martina Holt. It was relating to speed bumps. I get we need speed bumps, but what about an exit to get out of the neighborhood when it's flooded? I think we've discussed that in part for the majority of the conversation. Robbie, is there anything that we haven't said about an exit that doesn't involve more engineering and decisions that will be made based on feedback and input in the future?
No, sir. I think everything from this point forward, will involve more engineering, surveying, and analysis of the area so we can see which is going to be the best options to present back to the neighborhoods.
Thank you, Robbie. We'll keep moving along here. Also, Ms. Holt had a comment that the attorney's response that we get, and that was to the earlier question about liability of engineering work or work that the city's done negatively impacting the homeowners. Mrs. Holt's comment is that the response from the attorneys should become public so that the residents know what those answers are specifically. Okay, and again, we had a question that asks, not a connection, just an exit so we can safely leave and enter our homes. For the sake of sounding redundant, it sounds like the issue of next steps is going to keep coming up. So we can resolve that many of the suggestions, ideas, and questions that are posed here will not fully be answered until we have more meetings, more information, and more feedback. So again, not trying to be off-putting, but I think we can get redundant if there are a lot of ideas. We'll try to read those in, but we won't have these answers, specific answers for most of these until there's more concrete research, study, survey, discussion. So, but we'll keep moving through with some of these. We're almost through the questions that you've presented. Someone had a comment. Their contact is truncated here, but they say, I paid $5,000 to trench my yard. Don't tell me as a homeowner that I can't protect my home from drainage. I had no flooding before 2 years ago. We've had numerous hurricanes in 27 years. So hearing that this has been a bad year doesn't cut it. That was a comment from one of our attendees. Again, Ms. Harrison had an observation. I don't understand why trenching is not an option. It would be much better than making a whole new road. Robbie, is there anything there that needs additional answering or consideration?
Yeah, that's no. Again, that is in the flood zone, and state and federal law will not allow us to go in and trench the flood zone. A homeowner, as Jeron, as you just mentioned, if they did something on their own property, then that's up to the homeowner. But as far as the city coming in and trenching out the flood zone, that is state and federal law that we cannot do that.
Okay, thank you, Robbie. We had a question that is, well, we'll answer this one briefly. It's not directly related to what we're talking about. Ms. Turner asked about, can we also get a light out on East Chester, because it's hard for us to get out also. So apparently there's some lighting issues. If I may, Mr. Manager, unless you want to answer that specifically, we could reach out.
Yeah, we have already approached NCDOT about a stoplight at that location. That is an NCDOT street, and they have said that no, they're not interested in putting a street light or a stoplight at that location, and the city cannot do it without the NCDOT's permission.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. As we continue to move through the questions, after 50 plus years, this is an observation, after 50 plus years, I would say yes, it's time to bring to City Council on December 7th. There is a comment. Please submit your comment in the Q&A for it to be addressed by tonight's panelists. I think that's from us. We're almost done with the questions. Someone said a physical mailer would be appreciated. Mr. Morgan said he would be glad to help put together and mail a flyer to Foxwoode Meadow residents. Miss Odolinska has a comment. How are you going to help me? I live at 2137 Rivermead Drive and get 7 to 9 feet of water every couple of months. 2 feet from one side of my house, 2 feet. Think about it. Foundation under my house was fixed in 2010, and now I need to do it again. We're talking $10,000 for the fix that will only buy me more time, but no solution. Can you buy out my house? So I think we're getting into a legal question, maybe that could be absorbed into the conversation and reply from our city attorney. And if there's some direct communication that we need to make with particular homeowners, I think we can do that as well. From staff, is there anything else we can add to that? I don't know that there is, but feel free.
No, Jeron, I think you're exactly right. Let's direct that question to the attorneys.
Okay. Well,
Jeron, once again, if Ms. Odolinska would send me a direct email with that question, I can get that information to the city attorney and get a direct answer from her.
Okay. I think, okay. And I'm sorry, I apologize here. I think we have Mr. Councilmember Hudson. I think he's got his hand raised. He's waited patiently. Can we promote Mr. Hudson so that we can hear from him, please?
Yes, there you are.
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
All right. Thank you. This is Councilmember Wesley Hudson. And I just wanted to share with the residents that these issues have gone through the Prosperity and Livability Committee. And we have discussed these in the past, and they're still on the table, and we're still discussing them. And I've been here for the whole meeting, and I've heard your comments and written them down, and they have been heard.
Thank you, Councilmember Hudson. Some other comments that have popped up as we run down the last few. There's some comments that we all care about speeding. It's not safe to be unable to leave and enter your home for emergencies, whether at 15 miles per hour or 50. There is an observation that High Point doesn't need to wait, that reaching out to the neighborhoods is important ASAP. This person is more concerned about flooding than speed bumps. There's a question about Big Lots parking lot. I'm not sure exactly what the context is there.
So Jeron, that was my question to Ms. Turner. She was saying that there's a business in the area with the parking lot that she was talking about behind the trees, and I was asking if that was also Big Lots, the Big Lots parking lot. And also for those, I placed my email in the chat box. So if you would like to email me any of your questions, especially those that were of a legal nature, my email's in the chat box, and any other questions that you would like to contact me about, my email is there.
And just to be clear, this is not one or the other. I mean, I see some of the comments as well. I mean, if we're doing a 7-figure project here, there's no reason we can't add speed mitigation in conjunction with any of these watershed mitigation options. So we're not saying that we would do one or the other or not. I would think that both options could be on the table to make sure that everybody's safe and we don't change the safety of the neighborhood.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. There was a comment. I think some of the attendees are under the impression that they're not in the flood zone. I'm not sure. I know there was some observations made earlier about what we could or what we couldn't do in the flood zone. Robbie, I'm not sure if your map helps to answer any of that or if that's a point worth sharpening. But is there anything, if the attendees here, if some are in the flood zone and some aren't, how does that affect next steps and what we're talking about here tonight?
Well, this map was just representation that has been produced and information we have received from our FEMA flood maps. So we have overlaid that onto our roadway system and mapping here at the city. So to show that flood zone, if somebody is not in the flood zone, then maybe they're not as impacted. But however, if they have to access through this flood zone to get to their property, that's obviously the obvious impacts. And Jeron, I may have totally misunderstood your question, so feel free to re-ask that if you need to.
No, I think that was a question about.
And I'll share the map once more here so you can see that as well.
Okay, thank you, Robbie. There's a question about the.
Jeron, just a point, everything in the yellow is in the flood zone. Everything here in this kind of the lighter yellow color is within that flood zone. Okay.
Thank you, Robbie. And if everyone can see that, if we've captured those email addresses to our team, if we've captured those email addresses, we can probably share this map with people that are in the if they need it, if they want it, we can probably share that with them. Okay, thank you. There's a question about, now we're talking about the flood zone. There was a question, can the river be cleaned up from all the trees that have fallen in the last couple of years? That's a question that's come through. Robbie, is that something you can address?
Yeah, Jeron. So trees that have fallen, that's something that I can definitely have staff to look at. If it is majorly impacting the current flow, there is a possibility we can help with that some, but with it being in the flood zone, the flow is fairly slow through that area. So we'll look at it and see if there's anything that we can do for that. Okay,
thank you, Robbie. Just moving along with the questions that we have here. We see that people are asking, okay, there's some email addresses that are being exchanged here. That's good. As a city, okay. Okay, this is an observation. Is it me or is it every option we throw out there's a no or we can't do that because of the cost? What about the tax money that we are overpaying because we live in a flood zone? I think with that, I would speak for everyone that has kind of offered dialogue today that I don't know that other than on some specific issues that the answers are no. I think the answers right now are wait and see and not right now. So I don't know that we've necessarily eliminated, I don't know if we've taken any very much off the table. I think there's more information that we need and more discussions. So I don't know if I'm speaking presumptuously there, Randy or Robbie, but I think this is still a wait and see and we've got more work to do kind of approach.
That's correct. One benefit of meetings like this for myself is always hearing the comments and the customers, from folks who actually see it and live it each and every day. So we can take these comments back, we can take these concerns back, and if we're given further direction and council votes for us to move forward, we can take those ideas and comments and seek for the best solution to help the most people out here.
Okay. And for the last question that I see, there's a question from I guess it's Mike Hazel or Christian, I'm not sure. The question is, what do we do in the meantime if a health issue is happening? I don't want to read too much into that question, but if someone needs to get out and there's a flood, I guess is the question. I don't want to read in if we are able to, for that particular question, if we can get either Michael or Kristen, if they're asking if there's an emergency, what do we do? Are either one of the Hazels on? Can we hear?
Hi, this is Kristen Kazel. My question is more in regard to when the flooding does happen, what do we do if a health issue arises? I have severe chronic illness issues and medications that cause me at times to have seizures and such. So if that happens, my husband needs to be able to get me out of the house. And I know there are neighbors who also have health problems. So I just want to make sure that in the meantime, we have a backup plan or something, because this seems like it's not going to get resolved quickly.
Hi, Kristen. This is Councilman Holmes. I will look into what emergency services has options. Like I said, I don't know if there's any specific service that can come directly from flooding. But I think if we start to look ahead and we start to see there's a possibility of flooding, maybe the city can work together with the county and possibly maybe get some emergency services over here. Like I said, I don't know, but that is something that I will start to look into tomorrow. So I do believe that this is a serious enough matter for us to do whatever we have to do. So I know that's not something that maybe is comforting to you right now, but give me a couple of days and I'll see if there's some possible options, and I'll coordinate with city manager and city and possibly with the county to see if there's something that we can do.
Michael, this is Randy. The fire department, our fire department is well aware of this flooding situation and has in the past responded on numerous occasions to help people get in and out of the subdivision during a flooded situation. So that will continue and on an as-needed basis as it has in the past.
Randy, is there a way, and I know this might sound a little off, but kind of pre-planning our fire department to get ahead of this? We're able to see the weather reports, and I think Robbie alluded to the damaging storms. Is there a way for us to kind of pre-plan some solutions if we think we're going to have the conditions are right for potential flooding?
Well, and we already do that, Michael. In the case of a hurricane coming through, as Robbie stated earlier, we try to lower the level of the lake to give it more holding capacity. And the fire department is, again, on duty 24 hours a day, ready to respond at any flooding situation. We have numerous places that flood all throughout the city, and they respond to all of them.
Whatever.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Mr. Manager and Councilmember Holmes. So I guess what we'll, at this point, what we'll do is we will include, and I'll ask someone from my team to include our central information email address, pio@highpointnc.gov. That way, if there are some questions, that's one that several of us will see it and we can share, so that, you know, if you're sending an individual message to a council member, that's great. They provided that contact information, but that PIO address, we'd be able to get several sets of eyes at one time. PIO@highpointnc.gov. If you look into your chat, we've added that. There's some other comments that are popping up, but I think many of them revolve around what we've talked about with the water rescue, 911, with an emergency resource. So at this point, I will thank everyone for their participation. We know that people had lots of questions. Hopefully we were able to at least get the conversation started to a next steps capacity, and we will continue to be in contact with the neighborhoods. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Council Member Holmes. If he's got anything closing that he wants to say, I'll turn it back over to him.
Thank you, Jeron. I really appreciate everyone showing up tonight. You know, also to city staff, Manager McCaslin, Robbie Stone, Lee Burnette, council members Hudson and Jones. This is not an easy situation to solve, but I think the first step that we take is getting the potential solutions out there, and then you know, taking action after that. So, you know, I look forward to hearing from all of you, you know, over the next couple of days. And so we're going to endeavor to have our next meeting, whether it be virtually or in person, hopefully, if we can manage to do that in the next 30 days. So we don't want this situation to continue to linger. We want to give it the attention that it deserves. So I thank you all for your calls. I thank you all for your sharing with me when this happens. And so I look forward to you know, bringing potential solutions you know, to you in the next couple of days, and the next session of this. So as we go, we'll try to do you know, a better job of getting the information out, giving more lead time, so that we can get better participation. I know this was pulled together quickly, and I thank for those of you who shared it on social media, and thankful for those of you who spread it word of mouth. We'll try to give you, you know, much more lead time, so that we can get a better representation from the neighborhood. But I want to thank city staff and other members of council for being here, and for Jeron and Sarah for moderating tonight. It's very important that we continue to pull together. This is not an easy issue to solve, but I think together we can make some solutions happen.
So with that, we will end this meeting. Thank everyone for participating, and we will be in touch soon. Thanks, everyone.